Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today we talk about JDM gear, and hopefully this video helps you out in your buying decisions. That's one. And two, your choices, because I know it is a lot to absorb. And sometimes when you're faced with a lot of, let's say, decisions that are kind of alien, it's so hard to get what you need. Okay, so hopefully this video will give you a few pointers on the thought process behind the reels, the rods, how they're put together, how they're supposed to be put together. Okay, and that's that. Now, before that, let me tell you a little story because it's very important to this whole thing. It details exactly how difficult it was for me to transition from using US market rods and reels, line and all that, to the Japanese system, which is kind of different. So hopefully this gives you an insight of the struggles that I had to go through and why. Growing up, all the reading material that I had for fishing, all the videos that I had access to readily, and obviously those that I understand, all American, all American. Okay, there were some fishing videos that you find on cable from NHK, which didn't make sense at all. You watch because they're fishing, but the type of fishing that they were doing, the type of rods and reels that they were using are totally alien. Because remember, since the time I started fishing, it has always been American stuff. Now, in the Philippines, our measuring system was also kind of out of whack. And this is where it starts to get really difficult. We measure distances in kilometers, speed in kilometers. But at one point, we were measuring wood by board foot. And remember, my dad's an architect, and we had a woodworking business, factory, shop, whatever you want to call it. I grew up measuring things in feet and inches. And even until now, most Filipinos, especially in the Philippines, if you say someone is like 6'3", they would know exactly what that means. And right now, as I'm talking to you, I don't know the metric equivalent of 6'3". I literally have to Google it because for me, height 10 feet is easier to determine than 3.3 meters. As far as this whole measurement thing, I still don't know. So for me, going with the diameter that the Europeans use, until now, I don't have like it just flies over my head. It's something very difficult for me. So you have to understand that when I talk about JDM and stuff like that, I am with you guys when it comes to the grams, the what do you call this, the grams, the versus ounces. Okay, so it's it's it is a very difficult process to transition into. The reason why I'm telling you this is because even till this day I'm struggling. However, it is actually easier than you think. Okay? Because some things in the American system just don't make sense. Okay? So this line here, okay, this line here, it's PE2, okay, right here. And then if I have a similar line that I hold, I can feel it, I can look at it, I can literally put it side by side, and then I can say it's also PE2. Oh no, this one's a bit thicker. This one might be PE3. Okay? See, the truth of the matter is, you could probably determine that, just by physically holding it, than actually saying that this is 35 pounds or 38-pound test. There's a difference, okay? So just by the holding it, okay, just by holding it, you'd be able to determine with relative accuracy what the PE number is. See, here's the thing that don't make sense to me, okay? And I'm sure that for a lot of people, it should. Now, the diameter of the line, when you put it against the spool of the reel and then you wind it, depending on how thin or thick this is, determines how much line you put in. And this is one of the biggest things for me that was kind of a deal breaker. Because for the longest time in my lifetime, I was measuring poundage. But when it occurred to me that the poundage doesn't really give me the length measurement of what can fit inside the reel, then that's when I said, like, okay, that doesn't make sense. OSHA jigger 50-pound test is 340. Okay. And then 65 is 250. And then 40-pound is 400. Okay. So here's the thing. PE3, 400. PE4, 300. Okay? So it immediately tells you that if you are putting PE3 on this, you'll have to put 400 meters. Now in Japan, you can actually buy spools that are interconnected, and each spool is 100 meters. And a normal spool of line is actually 300 meters. Think about that. So this reel, 300 meters, full spool of PE4. That's it. That's why I also say that this is actually more of a fast jigging reel than it is a slow jigging reel, because of that, because this is actually kind of designed for PE4, if you think about it. Okay? So it's not coincidence. Now, another reel that I'd like to point out is this one. Okay, this is a Vanquish 3000 HG. And what it is it's a light, very light reel. It is made for Suzuki. Okay. The capacity for this, okay, it's PE1, 400 meters. E1.2, 300 meters. Okay, so not a coincidence. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that when it comes to JDM reels and line, they're actually putting things together so that it's like literally you have a rod that's rated for, let's say, 1.2. Hold on. Okay, here we go. This is a Yamaga Blanks. Okay, and this is an old one, so it has been discontinued, but the section that we have here, okay, should actually tell us the specs that we're looking for. Okay, so this one is 0.8 to 1.5. Okay, the lure casting range is 7 to 28 grams. Now you put this thing together and you end up with something that's very, very light. Okay, and this is 9.5 feet. So 9 foot 5. And see, they even measure it with the, the foot. See, now you have a reel. It's the same thing with the American style of balancing where you actually look at the numbers. But here, it's basically they're telling you that you can very, very effectively put zero point 0.8 on this, and you can comfortably fish up to 1.5 on this rod. It's the same. On the reel, you have a reel that can fish like PE1 400 meters. So it's again, the reel itself is telling you that with the diameter of number 1, okay, or go, you will have 400, okay? Or if you have 1.2, you have a full spool that you could buy in any shop, 300 meters, okay? That's that. And you end up with a system that's very, very light. Now, in the States, it might be a bit different. Now, you compare something like this, the equivalent might be different, okay? This is tuned for mostly plugs, okay? It's for plugs. And I'm gonna show you, this particular lure is very popular in Japan. Okay, this is actually, believe it or not, a JDM product, okay? And the brand might be very familiar to you. So even this brand has JDM. Obviously not sold in the US, but look at this lure, okay? So this is built for this system, and it is for a specific fish, and there is a very good reason why they did it like this. Again, when they build stuff, they don't do it randomly, okay? There's a reason why the Vanquish is actually light. Firstly, it is for the fish called Suzuki. It's a Japanese sea bass. And majority of the fishing that you do with Japanese sea bass while on land, okay, land-based, is wading. Okay, it's wade fishing. But when you're fishing and you're kind of waist deep in water, you want things to be very light, for one, because you're casting for hours. Okay, so the rod, the reel, very light combination. And this, mind you, if I put this together, it's very, very light. Now, you're casting for hours in the dark, because guess what? Fishing for sea bass in Japan is an evening affair. So, what you want is for a rod and a reel that you won't have to fight, and it would be easy to use. And for someone who's an older gentleman, okay, possibly with heart issues, can do without getting fatigued fast. So the whole system, and mind you, these things are not cheap. They're actually priced quite high. As far as the price of tackle is concerned, for land-based fishing near cities, okay, sea bass is actually on top of the list. So in Japan, there's tier lists of the type of fishing and the fish that you go after. And the gear corresponds to the status of those fish. The most expensive gear and the most expensive type of fishing that you would encounter in Japan is for GT. So all these Stellas and all these Saltigas, the main market for these types is the Apex, which is GT. Next to that would be casting for tuna, and then casting for yellowtail. So that's like kind of like one, two, three. Kind of also depends on where the angler is based. But see, the thing with GT, and if you just keep it in Japan, for GT fishing, you would have to travel to Okinawa. So that's a plane ride going to Okinawa. That's why it's on top, because for GT fishing, you're really gonna have to spend for a trip. You're really gonna have to spend for the equipment. That's why they price the gear so high up for GT. And yeah, true enough, GT fishermen, they're the ones that actually go around the world. Okay? So again, just the headspace, okay? This type of gear, it's very, very specific. And then thin gear for stuff like this, as you can probably imagine, PE 1, 1.5, PE 1.2, thin lines, casting. Okay? I think one of the things that kind of messed things up for, you know, like how people perceive, someone, okay, I don't know who, but someone started that and said that, oh, PE1 is about 10 pounds. Actually not. Actually not. Okay? Now, let's go to YGK. So that's X, or just X braid. I think that'll work because X braid YGK. Okay. Now, the reason why we're actually looking at this particular brand is because they have a factory. Okay? And having a factory is very important. Okay? It's very, very important because it means that whatever they do, it's always consistent. So if you go to their product or one of their products for braid, let's say Oddport X braid, okay, you'll find that a standard spool for them, they have 150 meter spools, 200 meter spools. It corresponds to shallow spools and the diameter. Okay? Again, very easy to follow. There are shallow spools for some reels, for light game. So they have ultralight fishing there, which is, it could be ajing, fishing for aji, mebaru. Those are types of fish. And they don't run far. So, shallow spool reels, they have a lot of that. 150 meters for these fish that don't run is plenty. Okay? Trout fishing, even there, BFS, this is the birthplace of BFS. They don't need more than 150 meters of line. Meters. Okay? So, guess what? The spools correspond to this. They have 100 meters, they have 200 meters, and for lines 0.8 and above, they have 300 meter spools. And then they also have fishing line that's 100 meters for one spool, and you have like a dozen or 10 of these connected spools. So you can get, let's say, 500 meters. All you have to do is just have 5 of these thin spools. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cut it. Boom. You have 500 meters. Okay, so for jigging especially, that's what they do. Now, let's just say we're looking at PE1, okay, which is supposed to be 10 pounds. That's what they said. No, it's actually about 20 pounds. Okay, so 10 kg, it's closer to 10 kg than it is 10 pounds. Here, you'll see that there are some that are like 18 pounds. So again, closer to 20 than it is 10. And you can't just say that that doesn't matter, because it does. There is a perception going around in the US that Japanese line is weak. It's not. Okay, it's not. So a very interesting thing is that a lot of people are comparing, like, oh, you know, they're catching what do you call this, big tuna, because tuna is a big thing in the States, like the bluefin. Okay. uh Actually, let me show you. So on port is one of those lines. Okay. So here's the thing. Okay. When you are braiding, now remember, this, we're talking about factory here. So when they're braiding, they have proprietary braiding techniques. So each type of braid is braided in a different way. It could be that it is, say, 8 carrier, so 8x braid, and the way they braid it and how the treatment of those single filaments, it differs. And one line could be stronger than the other. Okay? And take note of that, because this whole PE1 equals 10-pound test thing, it's very misleading. Now, I'm going to show you a few things here. Okay? And, okay. Firstly, you see this? This is what I'm talking about. So that's 100 meters at 12 connected spools. Okay? Now, if we see here, that's PE1 and that's 25-pound test. See, 1.5 is 35, PE2. And remember, we're talking about slow jigging, PE2, 45 pounds. That's closer to 50 pounds than 25 pounds. Okay? So literally, PE2 could be 45 pound or 50, because we know that braid over tests. So Japanese braid kind of is not excused. Okay? It could be that they will overtest, but they don't overtest like American braids that overtest by a lot, by a big margin. Okay? So for them, it could be. The only measurement on the reel that you measure against the what do you call this, the poundage of your line, is the drag. So hopefully that clears things. Okay? And the reason why we're talking about fishing line majority of the time is because things are based on this, you know, the diameter. Okay? So remember, when you're fishing for sea bass, most important thing is that you're casting far, so that you are covering a lot of ground. So together with a light rod and reel, the design of the spool making it long casting, and the design of the line wherein the line itself has a coating to reduce friction. Okay? Heavy lures, and you're casting a lot, and you're using thin line. Okay? Thin line, which gives you a very accurate, well, not accurate, but it gives you an idea of how much line you have. Okay? So quite important. And now in jigging, very important, because the amount of line that you put in there, you should keep this in mind, it's in excess of what you need. So take for example, for a reel like Studio Ocean Mark. Okay, you're using this type of reel, and it's the same size as a 2000, but the capacity of this is quite a lot, almost 1.5 or double. The idea being is that if you snag and you cut your line, you're still fishing. You still have enough line to go fishing. So the diameter is important. The diameter is very, very important. That's why It is the standard in which they choose. The standard in which they choose to base a lot of their fishing on. Now, obviously in the States, it's a very different way of thinking, and you know that works. However, when it comes to this whole thing, okay, substituting the line doesn't give you a fully working system. If you change the diameter of the line to something that's not recommended, what happens is that you tend to scope out a lot because you have thicker diameter line. It's as simple as that. Now, hopefully also the kind of figures that I've shown you here, like take for example PE2 being closer to 50-pound test than what people think there in the States, that's 20. Okay. That hopefully tells you that if you're, say, loading 20-pound test, and this 20-pound test, if you look at let's say Power Pro, if you think that 20-pound test is equal to what do you call this, is equal to 20-pound PE2, no. Okay, now compare what's labeled as 50-pound test to, say, the 45, which is supposed to be close, but then the 50 in the US breaks at like God knows 80 maybe, you know. So if you're looking at things, instead of actually putting 20, which breaks at 50, you put 15 that kind of breaks towards 45, 40, something like that. And that's what's probably closest to PE2. You know? Another thing that you have to realize is, and this is a very good example here, the line in the Japanese system for jigging is metered. So you see different colors, and each color represents 10 meters, and it goes together with the depth settings that we have our fish finder on. So when the skipper actually says that there's fish at 40 meters, all we need to do is count 40 of these colors, and we know that we're in the vicinity of the fish. So again, something that's not really used in the States, has something to do with how you guys measure. But the thing is, this is a system, and you can't just say that you're using part of the system and things will work out. Now, if you guys really want to see what this system can do, it could be that you want a kick-ass ultralight system. It could be that you want a light tackle system that you can what do you call this? You can use that for light tackle fishing. Okay, great. Take note of all these things that I've mentioned. The poundage, most especially, because it will guide you. And majority of the time, whatever you think you're putting on the reel, you scale down. And unless you try the Japanese line, you wouldn't really know how the system works, or what the potential is. You wouldn't really know if it's effective or not up until you're faced in a situation where the fishing is not that good. And this is where the system actually kind of separates itself from whatever's usual. Because the whole reason why they arrived in this kind of state is because of how their fishery is. Okay, I joke around and say, like, guys, you're talking of the land that's the birthplace of sushi. So kind of a joke there, but if you think about it, um, they're more of a fish eating country. So the pressure that they put in their fisheries there is immense, and their fishing tackle has to evolve to keep them entertained, to keep them catching. And this is why, you'll see that there's always a lot of movement in the Japanese fishing industry. Let me just plug this in again. All right, so it could be that, model of a particular reel is ran for a really long time in the States, whereas in Japan, something like this 6,000 twin power would only run for about 3 to 4 years. And after that, they upgraded. Now, this wasn't sold in the US for the longest time, and this was on the model list of Shimano. This was basically number two, and rightfully so. This reel is actually really nice, and a lot of the parts that you see here, a lot of the technology is actually from the Stella. The thing that separates this from the Stella is that this is actually a bit heavier than the Stella, okay? But as far as smoothness and power goes, it's actually pretty good. So before, what I used to do was to buy this, and I have a lot of these reels, more than the Stellas. So it's kind of worth looking at the models and seeing exactly if there's something like this. Now, for Daiwa, there's, I think, the Catalina. So this is kind of like the Catalina for Daiwa. So number two reel, and the price difference, it is literally halved. So for 50%, you get Stella Performance, but not the weight reduction from the Stella. So yeah, pretty good reel. The reason why it was called Twin Power was because this is the reel, I think one of the first, if not the first, to have the what's this, the twin drag. So one drag on top, one drag on the bottom. So kind of the first one to do that. Okay, now when you're choosing reels, one of the biggest things that I believe a lot of people, not just the US, do, okay, or the biggest mistake that a lot of people make when purchasing reels is buying a big one. And I'm not gonna tell you that's the wrong way of doing things. What I'm gonna tell you is that it might not be necessary. Okay, so here's a very good example. This versus this. Okay, so this is an L30, and for you guys that jig, this is equivalent to the 1500 Shimano, and 15H for Daiwa. A lot of people would think that this is too small for majority of what they do, and then they start with a 50 sized reel, or 2000 sized reel. Okay, so as you can see there, it's similar, pretty much the same. And then you say, like, okay, since I'm paying this much, I might as well Uh, Another thing that we should go back to, okay, is the philosophy of this. Okay, so a lot of the Japanese gear are built with not just comfort in mind but sensitivity. So this with a corresponding rod, again, you're buying into a system. Okay, you're buying into a system, and the system has several parts that need to work together. So with this comes a rod that's fit for this, together with the jig that goes with the system. What happens is that you will not only be comfortable, but at the same time be you would have a system that is very sensitive. Okay, this reel is lighter than this reel. Now let's just look past the fact that this is what do you call this, an OGM, which is very very light. But just the size alone, okay, if we had a 1500 OSHA jigger here, it's still going to be lighter than the 2000. Okay, and I see this mistake a lot, you know, with people buying gear. They think that bigger is better, which is fine, you know, if in your area there's a lot of big fish. But if on occasion, you know, you're occasionally catching 30-50 kilos, but majority of your catch is 20 and below, guess what? You don't need a bigger reel. You probably need better skills, but you don't need a bigger reel, because at the end of the day, if you poise yourself with something like this, and you know, even with this, few friends of mine found out just recently how this is actually strong, because they were under the impression that they could only catch big fish with gears like this, and then later on they found out that this could bring up really big fish. They just have to do it right. And this is what I've been trying to tell people. You know, you don't need a really big reel, max drag and all that. Maybe you need technique, you know. So that's that. Now, I'm not encouraging you, of course, to, you know, go out and buy these things, but hopefully the explanation that I have shared in this video helps you in your buying, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Okay, just the line alone, okay, just this line that they say that PE1 is 10 pound. It's not. You know, as I have shown you, it's not. You know, it's way more. So PE2 is closer to 50 pound. Okay, now this holds PE2. Imagine this small reel is a 50 sized reel. Okay, what do I have that's 50 sized? The what do you call this? The Who X, the Avid Who X. That's a 50-pound reel. The Accurate 665. That's a 50-pound reel. Okay, now think about this. This is PE2. This is made for PE2. So 665. Okay, 50-pound reel. This is what I bought it for. Okay, and this is what it was marketed for. Maybe 65, but definitely something. Before it was marketed as a what do you call this? Because of mono. Okay, now when we're doing braid, there we go. So smaller, but again, as I mentioned, okay, PE2 closer to 50 than it is 20-pound test, which is basically what they're saying in the US. Okay, so you have thin line, which is PE2, that is closer to 50 pound than it is what they're saying. So all it is very thin, very strong line, isn't it? So again, this whole video revolves around the line, basically because it is the basis for everything, you know. For rods like these, where you need to cast really far, you don't really measure the diameter because of the poundage. It's the diameter for casting, right? And the diameter at the same time is also what dictates exactly how much you can put on the reel. So if you just look at the numbering system that they have as something that's specifically made just so you know the capacity, just to ensure that you're casting far, these numbers are kind of easy to remember, you know? And the smaller the number, the thinner the line. That's it. Okay? Don't worry too much about the poundage, because like right now, we already have established that PE1 could be as strong as 25 pounds. Okay? That's literally 10 kilos, not 10 pounds. Literally 10 kilos. Okay? PE 1.5 is about 35 pounds. PE 2 is closer to 50, like at about 45 and probably in change, you know. 2.5 is 50 pounds. PE 3 is 60. PE 4 is 70. And PE 12, 180 pounds. So again, you know, it's not what do you call this? It's not how people in the States approximated it as, because even the approximation, if you look at it, it's about 50% off. So it's kind of unfair to actually say that, oh, it's, you know, PE1 is 10 pounds, because it's not. Okay? And at the same time, you also have to remember that, and I can't emphasize this enough, this is part of a system. So it starts with the line, and then you have your reel, you have your rod, and then it comes out after. So that's about how we do it anyway. So like my PE1, my leaders would be around 30, 25 to 30, you know. So it's as simple as that. All you do is just literally put the numbers together, you know, a PE3 reel, a PE3 rod, PE3 line. Try it out. It works. It's crazy, but you know, just with that, you can. And like I said, it's not random. There's a reason why it's like that. There's a reason why it lines up like that. Alrighty. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer. Drop them down in the comment section. Alrighty, that's it for now. If you like this sort of thing and you haven't yet, click on the subscribe button. Share this video if you think that you have friends and family that would learn from it. Okay, if you learned something in this video, give it a thumbs up. Of course, YouTube likes this sort of thing, and we're trying out a new format for this, and hopefully you kind of like this new style. Wow, every time I talk about fishing line, it becomes quite long, and this one is actually well, hopefully it'll help people. And by the way, if you want to help move the channel forward, go ahead and click that membership button. That's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed. We're keeping that one.